Good afternoon. I'm Larry Hansen, President of the Phoenix branch. Welcome to our second branch virtual event. We have 113 registrants for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We will be recording today's presentation. We have a poll question that relates to the project presentation that we're going to hear here in a couple of minutes. Young, can you bring up the summary? Thank you. The answer to the question is 25,000 bats, best estimate. So thanks for participating in the poll. First, we'd like to thank Young Kaprowski and Y2K Engineering for hosting today's virtual event with their software. Thanks, Young. We have several upcoming events. The first event tomorrow I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. On August 27th, we have a half-day sustainability presentation that's being hosted by the branch, and it's actually going to consist of 8 presentations that vary in length from 15 to 30 minutes that will cover either life cycle assessments or engineering for a sustainable future, and registration is required for that event. On September 9th, we'll have our next lunch with the Phoenix branch, and the technical topic will be building information modeling for infrastructure, model-based deliverables for highway and bridge projects. HDR Engineering will be our presenter, and they'll talk about a pilot project that they're involved in with the Iowa Department of Transportation, where they were retained to do design work on this large interstate interchange project, but their contract also included developing BIM models for 3 of the bridge replacements that they then shared with the contractor. So they're going to share that experience with us next month. On October 19th, the ASCE ASHE Annual Conference was scheduled to happen, but with COVID-19, that's being pivoted to a virtual event on October 22nd with a 4 p.m. start time, and we'll hear more details in future emails. The Arizona section is finishing up the 2020 Arizona Infrastructure Report Card and expects to release it in September. The Arizona section is also planning some presentations to present the report card to our legislators as well as the public. To help us in making those presentations, the ASCE headquarters staff is going to be doing some training on government relations and public relations tomorrow afternoon, 3:30 Arizona time. You should have received an email with the link to register for the event. If you didn't receive the email and are interested in participating, send me an email this afternoon at lhansen2@msn.com, and I'll send you the link so that you can get registered. We will provide a PDH certificate for attending today's presentation, and we'll try to get that out by the end of the week. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Keller, for providing financial support for the branch during 2020. And as they've indicated in their slide here, they were also a team member on today's presentation. Before I introduce our presenter today, a couple of housekeeping items. First, if you called in by phone, please place your name in the chat box and we'll get you a PDH certificate. If you have questions during the presentation, use the Q&A button and type in your questions. We will hold the questions until the end of the presentation. At that time, Dan Kasmer will take the lead on sorting out the questions and providing some answers. And if we do go beyond 1 o'clock with our questions, Dan has indicated that the team will be happy to stay around for a few minutes and finish up the questions. So we have 3 presenters today. Our first presenter is Dan Kasmer. He is a 2007 graduate at the University of Arizona with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. He joined ADOT as an EIT, and since 2011 has been with the South Central District. He was the senior resident engineer for the ADOT I-10 I-10 Road project that we're going to hear about today. And he is currently the senior RE for ADOT's $78 million I-10 Root project, road project, TI in Tucson. Our second speaker is Kevin Thornton. Kevin has 25 years of transportation experience on a wide range of projects, and he serves as the Director of Sustainability and is a principal with SOMAS. SOMAS is the design engineer for the project that we're going to hear about today. He's also accredited with the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure as an Envision Sustainable Professional. And our third speaker is Ryan Cannon. Ryan is a project manager with Sunt Construction, and Sunt was the CMAR for this project. Ryan has 18 years of experience leading construction teams on complex road, railroad, and transportation projects. He was Sunt's project manager for the I-10 I-10 Road project, and he's currently also Sunt's PM for the $78 million I-10 Root Road TI in Tucson. So with that, I'll turn it over to the project team. And Dan, do you want to start off?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to everybody for joining today. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this project. Really a project that ADOT, as the owner, is very proud of. One of the largest CM at-risk projects we've done in our history. If you inferred from the last couple slides, Ryan and I have been working together now for 5 years. Kevin said I had to have a joke ready, so I guess I'll just say I'm getting sick of working with Ryan, but I can't say it to his face. I'm just kidding. He's tremendous. The whole team was tremendous. This project was a great success. I'll talk about some of the awards that the project won. It won the 2019 Arizona Transportation Partnering Excellence Award. It won the 2019 AGC Build Arizona Award. It was the 2020 Public Works Project of the Year from the Southern Arizona APWA chapter, and it was also the 2020 Public Works Project of the Year from the Arizona chapter of the APWA. So that really just speaks to, like I mentioned, how successful this project was and how great of a team we had on it. From the design through construction, Sunt Kiewit as the CMAR was really fabulous to work with. And so, like I said, on ADOT's side as the owners, this is a project that we're just tremendously proud of. And I know it's been really well received in the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who's going to get into some of the background on the project and the design.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Hopefully everybody can see my screen here. There we go. As Dan mentioned, Blueberry Method was construction manager at risk. And that was with Sunt Kiewit, joint venture there. And I just got to say, echoing what Dan said, it was a great collaboration, just a really enjoyable experience all around. The contract amount was just shy of $125 million. And you can see one of the unique things, I guess, about this project is we had 2 GMPs that was actually split up into 3 separate plan sets. So the initial GMP basically allowed St. Kiewit to get in there and do some utility relocations that needed to happen before we could start the main work, as well as get like detours ready and things like that. So on day one of the main work, you could really switch over traffic and just get going on the major work. So you can kind of see there with where those the contract time started back in late 2016, early 2017 for GMP1 and GMP2. So it's been almost 4 years now since we finished up design. So I apologize in advance if I don't remember all the details. If there's any technical questions that I can't remember off the top of my head, it's been a little while, starting to get fuzzy. And then you can see we finished up contract time last year in June. So the project has been fully open here for a little more than a year now, and I think the region and town of Marana in particular are very happy with the results. Here's the design team. As mentioned, Summos was the prime. Kimley Horn, they did a lot of the structural engineering as well as some of the Ina Road roadway engineering, lighting, signals, and landscaping. Point engineers, they were responsible for the MSE walls, and they worked real closely with SE engineering. A lot of you probably know Naresh Samtani. They were the geotech on the project. SEE wasn't technically under SOMAS on this project. They were actually contracted separately with ADOT, but they were an integral part of the team. Gannett Fleming had the joy, I guess, of doing utility coordination, which was a huge undertaking on this project. We had every utility you could think of, and not just minor things. The water lines were huge. The sewer was huge. PEP had their substation right in the project area. It was just spaghetti underneath the roadway. So that was invaluable. The utility coordination on this project. Premier Engineering, they did the structural engineering for the Santa Cruz River bridges, which we'll be talking about here quite a bit during this presentation. And then We Design Group, they did the aesthetics for the project, and I think it turned out quite well. Let's see, so quick overview of the project. I'll start with Ina Road on the west end. Project started at Silver Bell Road and worked its way over to Camino de la Cruz. That was a total distance of about 1.5 miles. The town of Marana had improved the intersection of Silver Bell Road and Ina Road probably 10 or 15 years ago now, so we tied into that improvement. And then I-10 was improved starting at the south end is the Cañada del Oro Wash. So we stopped just short of the Cañada del Oro Wash and worked our way north for about 1.5 miles again. Some of the improvements, the main one being the main reason for the project was that I-10 used to pass over Ina Road, and Ina Road had an at-grade intersection with the Union Pacific Railroad. We swapped that over to have Ina Road pass over I-10 and the Union Pacific Railroad now. I-10 was widened to accommodate up to 4 lanes in each direction. It's currently striped for 3 until these next 2 projects are complete. Ruth Roth TI, which is currently under construction, has also already been mentioned a couple of times now. And then I-10, Ina Road to Ruth Roth. I'm sure a lot of you know that the RFQ is out. It's in ADOT's hands now with the SOQs. So good luck to you all, but not too much luck. Let's see, Ina Road, we widened to 2 lanes in each direction with the center median and sidewalks all the way again from I-10, actually a little bit east of I-10 to Silver Bell Road. Mentioned the architectural treatments and landscaping. I think we probably have some photos of those later on. And of course, you always have drainage improvements. So as mentioned, this was the at-grade crossing for UPR at Ina Road. Tucson on this section of I-10 does not have a lot of grade separated intersections. At least it didn't. We're certainly working on those right now. Closest one to the north is the Twin Peaks TI, which was completed probably been 10, 12 years ago now, and then Orange Grove TI to the south. The reason this was so important is that UPR had up to about 80 trains per day at this location, and caused quite a few delays for the traveling public, as well as your usual safety concerns. This is a view looking at the interchange, same direction here, obviously without the trains in the way this time. And looking eastbound, so this is on the west side of I-10. This section of INA is basically one lane in each direction. Sometimes there's a two-way left turn lane, sometimes not. But this was a section that the town of Marana wanted to include with the INA Road project. So ADOT and the town worked really closely together, very good partnering experience on that to get this part of INA Road included with the project. That way you could kind of rip the Band-Aid off for the traveling public at one time, and that was real big success there. I went back and found this photo from 1980. The photo is actually from 1984, but this is the result of the floods in 1983. Right in the middle of the photo there, you can see there's basically half a bridge. That was the INA Road Bridge in 1983. The west abutment was basically blown out in some floods back then. And you can see kind of a temporary bridge and road that I guess probably the county had built back then. But the interesting thing is that the western half of this bridge, when it was reconstructed on drilled shafts. The west half, or the existing part there that didn't wash out, remained in place, and those were on driven piles. And I think Ryan's going to talk a little bit about that later in the presentation too. But it was kind of a unique situation to have a bridge on two different types of substructure there. So again, I just wanted to mention the CMAR was a great experience. I'm a real big fan of it. I think it provides a lot of benefits for the owner. They still get to maintain control over the design and as well as the construction, yet it really provides a good collaborative environment to work in. With that, I'll pass it over to Dan. Oops.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So why did we choose this project to be delivered as a CMAR delivery method? Well, we had some unique issues and challenges, just like every project does. We'll get into some of those as we go through the presentation, and we'll talk more about that. Certainly, like Kevin touched on, the third-party utility relocation effort was just extraordinary. We had some funding challenges with funding for construction that was available in different fiscal years. So we had to find a way to kind of phase a project around the availability of the construction funding. And how can we do that? That's what led to what Kevin talked about in the multiple GMPs being used. Beyond that, ADOT wanted to realize the constructability reviews and cost savings from that, from having a CM at-risk contractor on board, somebody that could look at the different design elements of the project, talk about things that were impacting cost negatively, different ways maybe to look at constructability issues. A project of this size, there's certainly a lot of parts and pieces that you can look at, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so, with more people at the table looking at at the same issues and asking questions and finding answers, it's certainly a good value for the owner. The other thing we've touched on a little already is there were a lot of stakeholders on this project. Obviously, the UPRR and the railroad track on the east side of I-10, the town of Marana, who turned over a project that they had on the shelf to incorporate into our project with the widening from Silver Bell to Camino de la Cruz. Tucson Water had a couple very large water lines and other facilities in the project area that were a major part of the phasing and scheduling of the project. Pima County Wastewater, if you're familiar with Tucson, you know that the Tres Rios wastewater treatment plant is right there at the southwest corner of this interchange on I-10. I'll talk more about that as we go through, but even beyond that treatment plant, we had new sewer that we were installing for Pima County, manholes, all of those sorts of things. And then of course, quite a number of local businesses that were heavily impacted by the project, and we'll get into that as well. I think I went too far there. Here we go. All right, so another issue that impacted us was not all of the right-of-way was acquired prior to construction starting. There were quite a number of right-of-way acquisitions that ADOT had to go through to make this project a reality. By the time we got to construction, most of the right-of-way had been acquired. There were still a few parcels that were in different stages of acquisition. And so having a CMAR on board during pre-construction and design that understood the availability of where they could work and where they could not, and the timelines for that certainly helped us in developing a construction schedule that was workable. The archaeological survey kind of, if you've worked on these TI reconstruction projects, a lot of times that the archaeological survey kind of piggybacks on the right-of-way acquisition, because you can't do a whole lot of survey and data recovery underneath the roadways that are in use. And so, your options are to do that during construction, or to the extent possible, do that on the adjacent right-of-way that's acquired. And so we had some of the archaeological work done and some areas of the project cleared for construction prior to construction starting, but not all of it. And so again, having a CMAR at the table that understood those constraints and the timelines was also very helpful. Utilities were relocated concurrently with construction, as is the case sometimes, certainly with these TI reconstruction projects that ADOT's done in Tucson. Like Kevin said, it was just a whole jumble of utility companies underneath the interchange that could not relocate until construction started. I mean, we had Tucson Water, Southwest Gas, Tucson Electric Power, CenturyLink, AT&T, long haul fiber, small fiber companies. There was an irrigation district, Cortero Marana Irrigation District in the project footprint. So, like Kevin mentioned, the work that Gannett Fleming did, Diana Kelly, Karen Hobbs, both with Wood Patel now, but, the work that they did on this project was just tremendous, because, the lift to get that utility relocation schedule and then to couple it with what the contractor needed to do in construction was just a tremendous job. If any of you have worked on this I-10 corridor, you understand the subgrade materials that are in the area. I-10 parallels the Santa Cruz River here in Tucson in this corridor. There's a couple other washes that dump into the Santa Cruz River along there, the CDO wash, the Rito Creek. And so there's just this dearth of alluvial material that is kind of, settled into the area over the years. Now, if you're familiar with Tucson, that Pima County Flood Control has basically, capped all of the banks of all the rivers and washes in Tucson pretty much with soil cement. And that's what, has generated our tremendous loop system that everybody loves. But before that happened, like Kevin showed in '83, and way back, these rivers would flood and deposit soils everywhere. And that is what we've got. That's what I-10 is built on. And so we had our share of unsuitable and saturated material. We've got a bunch of pictures to show that, some of those issues. And then, another thing that's kind of unique to this project is the effluent discharge into the Santa Cruz River coming from the Pima County Tres Rios wastewater facility. So the Tres Rios facility discharges about 30 million gallons a day of effluent into the Santa Cruz riverbed as a groundwater recharge effort. And where it comes out of the facility is about, I'd say, 200 feet to the south of what was the existing Ina Road Bridge over the Santa Cruz River. Then it hits the riverbed and the Santa Cruz flows to the north. So, of course, lucky for us, it hit the riverbed, flowed to the north right underneath the bridge that we needed to demolish and then reconstruct 2 bridges in its place. So, you know, talking through that whole process with the CMAR and the designer during pre-construction about how to divert that flow of water, who would pay for the diversion of the water, how it would be reimbursed if the riverbed flooded, you know, during the monsoon or at other times of the year, you know, how does the diversion get rebuilt? You know, all of those discussions were just really, really valuable for the owner to be able to have with the CMAR during pre-construction. I'm not sure why it's not letting me advance the slide, Kevin. Oh, there we go. All right, so saturated soils. Brian will get into the phasing of the project a little bit later, but this was one of the early phases of the project. This is kind of when we got into the major construction of the project. We had shifted westbound I-10 traffic down to the old westbound frontage road. In the left picture, you can see that it was striped for 3 lanes through there. This was the old westbound frontage road. We've done some mill and fill on the pavement, really smoothed it out, made it a nice ride, done a little bit of widening in certain areas to accommodate the 3 lanes. And we had shifted traffic down to the westbound frontage road. The eastbound traffic shifted over to the old westbound I-10 alignment, and then we were going to get into reconstructing the eastbound side. About 2 days after we shifted I-10 traffic down onto the frontage road, we started noticing this pothole developing over here in the right lane. And we got out there one morning and it looked like the asphalt was kind of shoving. And, you know, as we stood there and watched it, you could see the pavement just rebounding as, you know, trucks drove over it. And so we immediately knew that we had a subgrade issue. And so, you know, Sunt acted pretty quickly, got some subcontractors lined up. I think for about 2 nights later, we were able to get out there. They brought a milling machine, and because we knew we had a subgrade issue, most likely with what we were seeing at the pavement surface, we just said, we're going to take a shot. We'll mill into it, you know, about 18 inches and see what we find. And, you know, sure enough, we found completely saturated material underneath. This area right here in particular was the old shoulder of the frontage road, kind of where the Ina Road westbound ramp got onto westbound I-10. And so it never saw traffic loading before. And then within 2 days of putting I-10 traffic on it, you know, the I-10 traffic loads they'll show you your weaknesses very, very quickly. And like I said, this lasted about 2 days before we had a major pothole that we had to get in there and fix. And I'll talk a little bit later on about how we address some of these. This one, we dug down about 18 inches. We put about 1 foot of asphalt millings in there to bridge the saturated material. Covered it with, I believe, probably used some GeoGrid and some AB, and then paved it back with asphalt and opened it up the same night to traffic. You know, we're really limited in Tucson. If we close down lanes of traffic on I-10 during the day, it's just a nightmare for traffic because we don't have any alternative freeway routes or a freeway system in this town. So we have to do all these lane closures overnight, and we're very accustomed to jumping out on these projects and fixing issues that pop up. And I'd like to tell you it doesn't happen, but every single project I've worked on, it has happened multiple times. You know, something pops up that you didn't foresee or didn't know would happen, and you've got to address it. And, you know, to Sunt's credit, they certainly put a crew and a team together very quickly to address this. All right, this is another area of saturated subgrade. This was over on that eastbound I-10 alignment, probably not too long after that picture you just saw. This was probably a couple weeks later. Sunt had just torn up all of the asphalt. You can kind of see in the bottom right corner the milled asphalt. This was the old I-10 eastbound alignment. Asphalt was all milled up. And where this the scraper is stuck in the mud here, this was probably like the right-hand lane of eastbound I-10. And so we were supposed to do on this project 3 feet of over excavation and recompaction. And so this was like day one of getting into doing that. And we were not even down a foot, into subgrade. And I think Sunt got 4 or 5 scrapers stuck within a 2-day period. And, people ask, well, where did this come from? Where did all this water come from? Was this was this a rain event or something like that? And no, it wasn't. This was within a day or two of removing the asphalt from this area. No rain happened. This was just perched water. This is water that maybe it sat on the shoulder or in the median of I-10, and it can't percolate down through the subgrade, and it gets trapped. And in some instances, it has an easier time moving laterally than it does moving down and percolating through the soil. So we ended up with this pure mud right underneath what was, the old I-10 alignment. And this is really challenging because, like I said, it's day one of getting into doing large scale earthwork haul, and you're getting equipment stuck that, that the contractor thought would be able to complete that work. So this is right after they pulled that scraper out, and you can see the ruts that were left, about 1.5 feet or 2 feet deep. And, we took some samples on this soil. We were getting, moisture content values of over 30%. And again, this is just super, super high, very saturated material. And of all the projects I've worked on I-10, I worked on the I-10 Prince Road project. I was the resident engineer for this project at INA. I'm the resident engineer for the Ruthroff project. The INA project by far had the most saturated subgrade of any project I've worked on. It's just a mess of soil. And, this was just another place where the CMAR was a great benefit to ADOT, because the working relationship with the contractor and being able to problem solve and work through these kind of issues was just tremendous, because, no two instances of this saturated subgrade is the same. You got to ask yourself, is it on the critical path? Does the contractor have time to open it up and allow the soil to dry out? If we could give the soil 2 or 3 or 4 days in the sun to dry out, a lot of times it would harden up and become really nice, and you could build good grade on top of it. But if you don't have that luxury, how are you going to attack it? We learned early on in this project, if we kept trying to dig and dig and dig, we couldn't dig our way out of it. Some of the initial ones that we got into, we dug 7-8 feet down, and we couldn't find the bottom of it. And then, when you're trying to build grade for a roadway, until you can find a solid base to build on, the movement in that soil is just going to chase you all the way to the top. And so, each one of these we had to deal with different ways. It's valuable for me to be able to lean on a contractor like Sunt or Kiewit and say, hey, what have you guys done in the past? What do you have available? We used rubbleized concrete in some instances. We used millings, like I talked about before. We learned early on we should probably have some geogrid on hand. We would use a combination of things, rubbleized concrete, AB, geogrid. And, eventually we were able to find ways through all these instances to build grade on top of it. But this is, I think, another valuable thing, for the community to talk about. There's so much talk nowadays about performance-based practical design. And, as an owner, we're seeing a lot of that from the design community of looking at different elements of the project about, where's their value or where's their ways to cut costs or do things more efficiently. I guess my personal plea after working on the I-10 projects through this corridor is, ADOT historically has kind of fallen back on a 3-foot depth of over excavation and recompaction, or over excavation and replacement, to deal with low density soils or low R value soils. I think that, I think the question can be asked there, is there value in that, or is there a different way to address it? Especially on this situation, like if you look at this project, we were putting down 12 or 13 inches of PCCP for the I-10 main line. And so we were using a rigid pavement with a really stout structural section, and we were still over excavating 3 feet below that. And, that's simply because that's the way ADOT's done it in the past, and that's kind of the standard, but, is there an opportunity to look at traffic loading, depth of influence? Are we even realizing any value trying to excavate down 3 feet into soils that we know are potentially hard to excavate? And from a contractor's perspective, an earthwork operation like this, you want to be able to do in a quick and efficient manner and pick the dirt up once and put it down once. So, that I think is something that, there's probably an opportunity there for us as an agency and the design community to look at. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to talk about some of the constructability reviews we went through and some of the value that the CMAR brought to the project.
You're on mute, Ryan.
After the award of the contract, we immediately went into constructability reviews with ADOT and SOMAS. So we sat down immediately and started going through the plans and with the estimators and us operations guys, and started dissecting certain areas. And there was multiple cost review savings, but I don't want to touch on all of them. But these were kind of the 3 big areas we went to through the plans. And there was a straddle bent at Santa Cruz River Bridge that we proposed. There was a grade control structure also at the Santa Cruz River Bridge. And then there was elimination of a bridge at Ina Road and Camino de Este. These 3 areas here seem to have areas to pick up a lot of money for the owner and ADOT. So we really focused on these 3 areas. And then the straddle bents here at the Santa Cruz. And the reason we went, the plans had, as Kevin mentioned, the east part of this bridge had some H piles. And when we went to line up the rest of the drilled shaft, there was going to be a conflict with bent line 7 and 8 here. So what originally was proposed was, why don't we remove those piles? And they were, if I remember right, about 50, 60 feet deep. Son, Kiewit, we both had a lot of experience with removing piles, and it's not the most cost-effective thing we've come to find out as contractors. So we proposed to ADOT and SOMAS and said, hey, how about we just straddle these and leave them in the ground. We'll just chop them off at grade. And so we put a proposal together of what it would cost, or what we thought it cost to remove versus building a straddle bent. And lo and behold, it was definitely a savings to the owner. So ended up going on bent 7 and 8 here with straddle bents. And you can see in the pictures here versus, 6, 5, 4, 3, the rest of the traditional bent lines. Going too fast here. The grade control structure. So the original plans, this grade control structure up the Santa Cruz had about a 12-inch slab, and this bridge was around 400 feet, 500 foot. So there was quite a bit of concrete that was going to go in here. It was going to be all reinforced, and then the drop inlet here was also going to be reinforced. And we were going to have to drill into the sides of the wall there. So we basically proposed, let's just eliminate it. And SOMAS and the owner, ADOT and Town of Marana, asked, well, is it going to hold up for another 30 years? So we went in and started coring the existing soil cement, got some cores out of there, found what the depth was. We broke a lot of that soil cement, and typically soil cement's around 750 PSI at 28-day compressive. The soil cement that had been there for 20, 30 years was breaking, up near 3,000 PSI. There was not all of them, but we had some really good strength in there. So we ended up, really working through that one with the owner and saving quite a bit of money there, and worked with Pima County Flood Control, and everybody was all comfortable what they were seeing on the compressive strength versus still how much life was available in that grade control structure. Another area was early on the schematic here of what I-10 would look like at Ina Road. And there's this bridge right here at Camino de Este and Ina Road. We started looking at it and started proposing, hey, why don't we just build fill there instead and get rid of the bridge? There was a right-of-way issue though, so we really had to pay attention to the fill slopes in all four corners. So we just proposed extending the walls a little longer in length and work the cost analysis on that, and it came out to be a cost savings there. So we were able to eliminate a bridge completely and just extend the walls. So that worked out really well too. Let me make sure. Again, the multiple stakeholders, Dan will discuss more about the stakeholders here, and also turn it back over to you, Dan.
All right, let me get back to where we are. There we go. Okay. Yeah, multiple stakeholders. Again, the town of Marana, the UPRR, if any of you have worked with railroad operators or the UPRR specifically, you understand the review times that they have for design elements and contractors' elements of work, coordination that needs to go in with them during design, contractors' operations and how they impact UPRR. All those things take time to work through. Tucson Water, we did 2 jack and bores of 2 casings for water lines to go underneath I-10, which was a huge effort. Pima County Wastewater Reclamation Facility, Arizona Game and Fish, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, had their hands in this project a little bit. Certainly all the local businesses, we had quite a few businesses that stayed open throughout construction all the way down near the interchange that we needed to maintain access to. And I went back and looked throughout the project. We utilized over 220 temporary traffic control plans that the contractor developed, that ADOT approved. And that speaks to how much phasing and coordination needed to go into moving traffic around within the project and outside of the project. And then, of course, all of the utility providers. There we go. All right, so this is a pothole ticket that came from the project. I think we did over 400 potholes throughout the project so that we could accurately map utilities where they were vertically, horizontally. And then, of course, that would help develop a relocation schedule and a scope of relocation that, Diana Kelly worked to produce. We held monthly utility coordination meetings throughout pre-construction and design with the utility companies and the CMAR. And then during construction, we held a weekly utility relocation meeting with the CMAR so that all of the utility companies could understand where the CMAR was going to be working, and the CMAR could understand where the utility companies were working, and the utility companies could talk to one another and coordinate their efforts so that they were not all trying to work in the same place as well. All right, so this is the old Ina Road Bridge over the Santa Cruz River. This was an old box girder bridge. And as you can see there, the voids that ended up between the box girders became houses over the years, became houses for Mexican free-tailed bats. And so part of the scope of the project was to basically relocate these bats from this bridge to the new bridges that we built. And so like the poll question at the beginning of the webinar said, there are about 25,000 bats that lived in the bridge during the height of the season, which is the summer months. During the winter, they would dwindle down to about 5,000 bats. Most of them migrated to the south warmer weather. And so, you know, again, this was another benefit of the CMAR, having the CMAR on board, that the CMAR could understand, you know, by talking to Game and Fish, what the relocation effort would take, when they could do it. Game and Fish wanted us to relocate the bats to the new bridge during the winter when the population was the lowest. So to be able to coordinate all those timeframes into the contractor's schedule and make sure that the contractor understood, you know, the hold points and what needed to happen when, and they understood how the bats would be relocated was really, really valuable. And so this is the underside of one of the new bridges. We basically built the eastbound Ina Road Bridge first to the south of the existing bridge. After we built the bridge, you can see this box in the middle of the picture there. That is a bat box or bat condo. It can hold up to about 3,000 bats. We put those in between the ASHTO girders. You can see we used pan metal decking for these bridges. That was a cost savings measure proposed by the CMAR that Town of Marana elected to utilize. When we were ready to demolish the old bridge, Game and Fish took a number of nights and they would go in there and they would seal up those cracks between the box girders and exclude the bats. And once all of the cracks were sealed up, they basically coat these bat boxes with bat urine, I believe, and it attracts the bats to these things. And once they were excluded from the old bridge, they were relocating to the new bat boxes. Then we demolished the old bridge and started building the westbound Ina Road Bridge. Business access, as I mentioned, was super important. We had some businesses right down near the interchange that remained open. You can see the donut wheel there. This is taken from the parking lot of a Circle K gas station. The donut wheel is kind of a Tucson gem, really important to the community. Credit to them. They stuck it out for a number of years while Ina Road was closed across I-10 with no through traffic. And so we basically had to maintain access for traffic to come all the way down to a dead end. And, like I spoke to how many traffic control plans we had, as the contractor's schedule progresses and the work is completed, you've got to move things around and maintain access and move traffic around. So it was always an ongoing effort. This is on the east side of I-10. This picture here is the west side of I-10 looking back towards I-10. There was a Denny's down here. There were a couple of hotels that also remained open throughout construction that we also had to maintain access to. You can see here on this side of the interchange, we had a slip ramp. You can see it over there on the right side of the picture. There was a slip ramp that came from Ina and went around the corner around the Pima County wastewater facility and intersected with the frontage road. So there was actually access to I-10 provided from the west side of I-10 in this project, which was nice for the community. All right, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
So we got into Kevin talked a little bit about the duration of the project. Yeah, there was two GMPs, GMP1 and GMP2. GMP1 was more of phase one. We got into a lot of utility relocations. We spent close to 6 months relocating utilities. This was one of the biggest utility jobs I'd ever been on. So before we could really close I-10 and Ina Road down and shift the traffic over, there was that first phase of just 6-7 months of utility relocations. And that's really what this picture is. Traffic was still flowing, but there was a lot of work on the shoulders of just getting traffic or utilities relocated. In January, February of 2017, I think it was, if I remember right, we went into the next phase, and that was phase 1B, where I-10 eastbound. We were able to shift traffic over eastbound to the old westbound and westbound onto the frontage road. And that's what it looked like looking south or looking eastbound towards the city of Tucson. A lot of that phase was getting all of I-10 eastbound, the new configuration alignment built up. And here's the first half of the bridge that we went after. There was quite a soil nail wall that had to go in just to the south here of the bridge, but for a drainage structure that went underneath. Phase 1B, all of phase 1 eastbound took us about a year to build. And then we flopped traffic, put eastbound and westbound onto the eastbound. We started building the new alignment for westbound and also the frontage road. While that was going on, we were able to start the bridge work at the UPRR, and you can see the girders are all set there on the UPRR bridge. This is just looking westbound, and we flopped everybody over, and we're working on westbound I-10 alignment and new westbound frontage road alignment. Here we are looking west or back towards the north, towards Phoenix, and or excuse me, back towards Tucson. Again, just the alignment. We're working now on the I-10 westbound abutment there, and we'll end up connecting the bridge. This right here is would be left as a gap. These are all MSE walls, so this is a big MSE fill that went in there. So it looked like an island. Again, more of westbound 10, I-10. And the traffic, there's a lot of train traffic on this job. There was about 40 to 60 trains a day that were coming through. So it was quite a challenge trying to build that bridge. We had to stop quite a few times to let trains go by, but it worked out really well. And then we went into, so phase 2 of the westbound was about another year. Then we went in the last 6 months of the project, which was phase 3. Phase 3 was a lot of the shoulder work, the landscaping, the aesthetic work on the project. This is when we opened up traffic. We opened up eastbound, westbound Ina Road in March of 2019. We were a month ahead of schedule. It was supposed to be open in April, so that was a nice little milestone for Sun Kiewit to be a month ahead of schedule there. The ramps, though, for I-10 westbound on and off were not open. It was just cross eastbound, westbound on Ina. It was the only thing that was open. About a month and a half later, we opened up all 4 ramps. Phase 3 picture of what it looked like completed at Ina Road and I-10. Again, just another phase 3 picture. Jumping into the construction phasing of the Santa Cruz River Bridge. So this was the other part. This was Town of Marana's contract portion. We started building the south half of the bridge first, which would be the eastbound direction bridge. We went after that bridge. That took us about 9 months, and then we eventually would flop traffic. Here's the columns, and the bridge deck is poured. We're getting ready to flip onto the next, and then you can see we kind of got a little shoe fly up there looking to the east. They're on the new Santa Cruz River Bridge alignment, and now we're building the north section, which would be the future westbound of the Santa Cruz River Bridge. Phase 2, again, this was about another 8 months of work on this bridge and / this alignment here. A lot of roadway work went into it too. And then pretty much a completed shot where we were able to open up eastbound and westbound in each direction on the new alignments. And then May of 19, we finished up where we had everything opened up, and the following month we went to substantial completion on the project. And this is looking westbound on Ina, where now it's a lot wider. And Dan, I'll kind of turn it back over to you and let you finish it up.
Yeah, and then this is kind of an aerial view from that same previous view looking to the west. This is out in front of the Circle K. You can see that down in the right-hand corner. You can see Camino de Oeste coming in there from the right hand. This is what Ryan was talking about previously. Early in the design, that Camino de Oeste was going to go underneath Ina Road there, and then there was going to be kind of a loop road on the left-hand side of the picture. And you know, as Ryan talked about, we changed that out from a bridge structure to basically just a at-grade T intersection, you know, built on embankment. All right, again, I don't know why I can't advance this. Thanks, Kevin. This is on the other side, looking back towards the east, just going up the hill to go over I-10. And then Kevin, if you want to go to the next one, this is aesthetics. The aesthetics, as Kevin mentioned early, were done by Wheat Design Group. It's a very simple, clean, geometric design, simple color palette. Really reflects some of the geometric shapes and stuff that you see in nature, kind of a reptile sort of geometric shape, maybe things you see on cactuses and the like. But a really nice job. Some of the rustication that we did on the MSE panels, was cost effective, repeatable, easy to build, easy to cast. So that was also nice. All right, and I think that is it. Let's see, we do have some questions in the Q&A box that I can go through here. All right, Sam Hanna asks, did you do a scoping partnering for this project and how effective was it? Kevin, do you want to start that one off?
Yeah, we did partnering, formal partnering at the beginning of the project, and it was quite effective, I thought. Didn't really have very many issues come up. I don't remember who was the champion of the partnering effort, but yeah, I think it went quite well. I don't know, Ryan, do you have anything to add?
No, not really. It was, we've been through a lot of the partnering efforts, and it went really well, the partnering on this project.
Right, and we did a kind of a value engineering meeting early on with the CMAR. You mentioned scoping in there. So we did, go through all of the value engineering process and identify, some ideas that the CMAR had. And then, you have to go through the process of identifying which ones are viable and which ones make sense. And so we did do that as well. Let's see, next question. What were the lessons learned from partnering during this project, even though it was a CMAR? I guess I'll start this off. I think we had really good partnering throughout the project, and we really had a team where everybody bought in, and it was obvious that everybody was going to need to buy in because there were so many stakeholders on this project, and a lot of different moving parts and pieces. And I think for myself, early on, I knew it was going to be a fun team to work with. Kevin over at Somas and the whole design team, Kimley Horn, all the people that were involved with design were excellent to work with. Sun Kiewit was just top notch, and was just a pleasure to work with throughout construction. And we just had a solid foundation from day one. And to me, that's the biggest lesson you can learn. You've got to build a solid team and a solid foundation where everybody's working towards the same goal. Because I think, although we have different interests, they don't always have to be competing interests. All parties can realize their goals, and make the project successful. And once you build a strong team where everybody has bought into the concept, everything else just falls into place after that. Ryan, I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
Yeah, the only thing I had to add about what I learned from the partnering is, up front, I didn't know Dan at the beginning. We got to know each other really well, and we're obviously still working together now. We were just open and honest with each other, and I would call him and just let him know what was going on. And the other thing I really liked about, and he started to trust us, which is really obviously what projects are built on. But what I liked about working with Kevin too is the open door policy we had. It was, you could call up Kevin at Somas anytime, and it wasn't like Kevin was like, well, why is the contractor calling me? We just had a really good team out here, and it was all the engineers, Kimley Horn, Gannett Fleming, Craig over at Point. Everybody was just very, very reachable. There was, so it just worked out great. Issues came up and they were resolved quickly because of that open door partnering policy that we established early on. And I don't think we set that as a goal. We all just got along really well, and it worked out great and just flowed.
Yeah, Jeff Hamilton mentioned that RHA did the partnering in the VE meeting, which is right. Renee Hextra did a great job. Paul asks, why was the saturated soil not identified by soil exploration prior to construction? And I don't want to convey the message that it wasn't, because SCE did a good job with the geotech on this project. It was a challenging project. You take so many borings prior to design, and you base the design on a handful of borings. And saturated soils, they did identify that there were areas that were highly saturated, but pinpointing exactly where those were going to happen, or how they were going to happen, or how much was going to be found, that's really what I was trying to speak to. It's hard to pinpoint all that stuff during design, when a lot of the stuff was found underneath, areas that were underneath roadways. So really, not accessible during the design effort, but certainly identified in the geotech report as the potential for highly saturated soils.
There might have been, there were several years probably between when the borings were done and when obviously it got opened up, and there might have been a dry year, or who knows.
Yep, you're right. I mean, we all know geotech is a tough a tough game. As Ryan and I know on the Ruthroff project we're working on now, those borings, none of them ever identified groundwater. Keller is doing the drilled shafts for us on the Ruthroff project, just like they did on INA. And as they know, we encountered groundwater at a couple drilled shafts during construction. So it's can be a moving target, Here's another question from Paul at TEI. Was soil cement considered in the stabilization of the soft subgrade? Yeah, I would say, I think in the geotech report, it was identified as an option. I think a lot of times, it gets chopped in lieu of doing overX and recompact, as, maybe that's the cheaper option to do. Once we started finding saturated soil, we did talk about it quite extensively at the project level about, should we pivot to doing like a soil cement? And, for me, and on the owner's side, it's a hard decision to make on day one of like a large scale earth moving operation, because you found it on day one, you might not find it on day 2 through 100, and so to commit to that money to do it, because to make it cost effective for a contractor to mobilize a soil cement sub, they're going to want to commit to doing a large scale effort. And so it would be like pivoting the whole project to doing that. And so we didn't pull the trigger on it. We just kind of ended up dealing with the saturated subgrade as it came, which I don't think was bad. That the pictures I showed of the scraper getting stuck were probably some of the worst that we found underneath mainline I-10. So it, like I said, it probably got a little bit better as the project went on, but we decided during the course of the project to just treat it case by case. All right, Dave Healy asks, were there any significant architectural issues during the project? Archaeological, all right. Significant, no, I wouldn't say significant. I mean, if any of you have worked in this stretch of I-10 and in this corridor, that, it's a highly active area from an archaeological perspective. People have certainly lived along the banks of the Santa Cruz River for many, many, many years. I don't think we really ever encountered any inhumations or anything like that during construction. I know there were certainly some found during the data recovery effort, by the archaeological firm, but as far as running into anything during construction, I don't recall ever being stopped or delayed.
No, it was pretty quiet on this one.
Yes. All right, Sam Hanna asks, why did the contractor suggest to eliminate a bridge? Kevin, I don't know if maybe a little bit more about the moving parts that went into this one.
Yeah, I can touch on this one a little bit. I think ADOT had originally budgeted I want to say about $7 million, or somewhere between $7 and $10 million for right-of-way acquisitions. Once they started getting in there, looking closer at things, starting to get some appraisals, the originally identified acquisitions like doubled in cost. So it went from like $7 or $10 million up to $20 million. And a big part of that had to do with that loop road that Dan had mentioned earlier. So what we did to eliminate the bridge was we came down from the I-10 at a steeper grade. And by steeper, I mean, we went to 5%. I think it was at probably designed originally at 4%, but it was enough to allow us to go ahead and tie in Camino del Este at a nice grade coming up towards INA. And the main thing that did, it did have some cost savings involved with the bridge, but I think overall it saved about $18 million, but the majority of that cost savings was actually in not having to do right-of-way acquisitions and relocations especially. We still had, I think, one or two full acquisitions, but it was greatly reduced, the overall cost. And that was the main reason for pursuing that elimination of that bridge. And I think it turned out really well.
All right. Keith asks, how were the costs shared with Marana and ADOT? Yeah, so as we've touched on, Marana had plans to reconstruct INA Road from Silver Bell down to, what is that? What was that?
Camino de la Tierra.
Yeah, Camino de la Tierra, that's right. And when they knew that ADOT was going to go in and reconstruct the TI, they approached ADOT to ask about packaging the projects together. And so, Kevin touched on it. We had 3 different plan sets on this project, 2 different GMPs. The second GMP was 2 plan sets. One was ADOT's portion of the project, which was mostly the TI. And then the other was the section of INA Road to the west of I-10. And so, that project, the town of Marana had lined up the funding for that. I think they had federal funds in that project too, but they had lined up the funding with that one. And then, ADOT's project was also federally funded. But there was certainly money coming from all over in all different places in this project, be it utilities, local utility providers. But that was it. I think the ADOT portion of the work was in the neighborhood of $100 million. And I want to say the town of Marana's was somewhere in that $20 to $25 million ballpark. And then Barry asks, did you mainly deal with UPRR directly or rail pros? Good question. Did the CMAR factor in the number of train movements crossing under the new bridge before or after construction commenced? Yeah, I think this project, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, it started with you guys dealing with UPRR directly back when Alex Popovici was still at UPRR, and back before UPRR kind of pivoted to going to a third party, management sort of situation. And that, I believe, happened during the course of the project, did it not, Ryan?
Correct. It happened during the project.
Yeah, and then the CMAR was they were definitely aware of the number of trains that were going through. We had meetings early on with UPRR talking about, make sure that the CMAR fully understood the constraints of, how their construction would be impacted by the trains, how much they would have to stop and hold off on constructing things, or when they could construct certain elements of the project. Ryan, do you want to add anything more to that from the contractor side?
No, you captured it all. Yeah, we were given all the information during pre-con and while we were bidding the project, so we knew the movements. We knew what kind of production rates we could get building that bridge.
All right, I think that's all the questions.
Dan, Kevin, and Ryan, thank you for a very informative presentation. We do have a gift certificate pardon me, a gift card that we provide to our speakers. So we'll have to get you that by mail. And again, thank you for a great presentation. And we'll be back next month for our next lunch with the Phoenix branch. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.